What happens if you don't advertise? Nothing. It says so right here. Of course, these are the people who publish the paper, so can you really trust them? Well, hello. Today we're going to look at the question of print media, print advertising. Is it completely dead? Or is it still of some limited use to the reseller? It's an interesting topic. This happens to be my local paper. It was dropped off here a week or so ago because they had some extras and they were trying to entice me to take out a subscription. Rose was reading it. In fact, she was looking at the articles on the wildfires. And yeah, resellers like to think that their products should sell like wildfires. And I have some video footage on that topic in the queue. But I want to take a look at the different forms of print media, print advertising. The origin of advertising, the origin of selling has gone back. It goes back to the origin of mankind. Depending on which origin story you endorse or believe in, we could even stretch it a bit and say Adam. God creates the earth, God creates Adam. First thing Adam does, he trades a rib. God barters a rib to create companionship for Adam. First trade. Okay, now Eve's there. All right, along comes the serpent. I consider the serpent to be the first real gleaner. Did he own that apple? Did he glean that apple? Well, there he is. He's got a shiny apple. He's rolling it around. He's trying to convince Eve she wants it. It's a new product. She's never seen one. Advertising. He ends up exchanging the apple for Eve's virtue. And reselling goes downhill from there. It's just a metaphor to talk about how old and how long the idea of reselling and advertising have been around. It starts out in a cave, a small group, tribe, family. After they create fire, they're drying skins, they're picking, hunting, gathering. Well, some years they'd have a surplus. Some years one group would have all of one product in abundance, but lack something else. The gatherers exchanging with the hunters, bartering, long before money existed. As time progressed, they began moving in larger circles. Village A wants to meet and interact with Village B. They want to exchange goods that may not be available in one location with another. Because before that, as groups collected to maybe be farmers or be gatherers or be hunters, and you could sell or trade your goods to those in your immediate circle. But what happens when all the people in your immediate circle have a fur garment or a bearskin rug? Well, you've got to go further afield. You've got to keep selling. You've got to keep showing that your products are better made than other people's products. It's in the news this week that some of the legislation in Congress is going to really make a change for the American reseller. With competitive imports coming in and tariffs and all that. But we're not talking politics today. We're simply talking about, is print dead? Or are there still some uses for it? If we take a look at the traditional paper, and this is a pretty small paper, it doesn't really have much news in it, at least beyond the city limits. The fires are the big news. If we go to the back, we've got the sections on classifieds. Now, for many years in my reselling business, early on in the 90s even, this was one of the primary ways we sold product. Because advertising doesn't really sell product, even though it's credited often with the idea, oh, we got our product out there, advertising did that, we made the sale, we had a good year. But advertising is used to draw attention to your product, to your terms, to your marketing, to your business, to show it off, to feature it in some way. Just like the snake He showed off that apple to Eve. She had to have it. You want people to have your product over other people's product. Because that's one of the thing about advertising today. You open a site like eBay, the homepage, it's so inundated with advertising. It may or may not be something you even are interested in, but it's there, it's in your face. If I open up one of my listings, my competitors' ads are there, competing directly for a buyer's attention. But what about the humble print? If you look in that section, I circled it here, there's still a long column of garage and estate sales, local to my area. And if you're from a certain generation, you still use this. You prefer it. You want to have the paper in your hand. You want to get your cup of coffee, a cue to drink some coffee. You want to get your cup of coffee and you want to plan your weekend. You may not have a fancy app that applies to your neighborhood or your city or town where you can plot out your route for garage sales. So people go back to the print ad. And these aren't cheap either. If you look at what it says, people are paying $15 for 20 words and 35 cents per additional word. Wow. And you can even add photos. So it begins to get a little unrealistic once you do. Now back in the era when we did summer sales, print ad was one of the things we used. Now I use it more for sourcing. And I don't use it often because most of this information is available and sortable online in a digital format. Many papers have the alternative. You know, you can get it delivered to your curb in your box, or you can acquire the same service online. But there's something about having your cup of coffee and a paper if you're of a certain age and you're not into that soundbite generation. But yeah, if we take a look at this, it's just one form of advertising. Like, let's take a look at a specific ad here in one of these papers. Now this guy's my direct competition. I know that. I feel it. I don't know this guy. But the papers are used by both buyers and sellers. If you're of that generation that likes print and you've got an estate to liquidate or you want to run a garage sale, you have many alternatives, many available advertising sources. And depending on how much you think you need to move or what your time frame is, you may want to use several of them. But don't discount print in a small town where it's a good, viable choice. Watch what you're paying for the ad. Going back to when I first started selling in '97, advertising in the paper, we had something called Free in the Flea. And if your item was priced at less than $150, you didn't even pay for the ad. But you physically inked it out and either handed over the counter or you faxed it into them. This can be a good source depending on what it is you're sourcing. In this case, the guy's running an ad that says, "Wanted, Grandpa's War Souvenirs." He's my direct competition for a niche I like to buy and sell in. It's a pretty extensive ad. He spent a fair bit of money. Putting this out there. And if he does it routinely, I wonder if it pays off for him. I wonder if he ever asks people who call, who are in contact with him, if he says, "Did you see my ad?" Because that's one of the things about advertising in all forms. Are you getting bang for your buck? Maybe, maybe not. But if you don't think you are, then reevaluate it. You can spend a lot more money a lot faster with electronic and digital ads or paying eBay promoted listing fees, where the percentage recommendations coming off eBay are, 12%, 15%, 21%. That's an awful lot of your profit going to advertising. What's it worth to you? What niche do you sell in? If you're in a crowded market selling modern items, that maybe got sourced out of a Walmart or a Target, and you're competing with every other reseller who's got those same items from their local Walmarts and Targets doing retail arbitrage, you may need to promote more. You may need to advertise more. If what you've got is vintage, unique, very few available, you may not. But those are all points you have to consider as a reseller. I was cleaning out the office this week, and I found what is probably the last local phone book for my area that I had. And of course, the first thing I did was take a look and say, am I in it? I've lived in this area a long time. I can't quite tell what year this was published, but no, I'm not in it. Unlike the old Steve Martin movie where he runs around yelling, I can be somebody, I can be somebody, the new phone books are here. I guess I'm not somebody. But Rose still loves me. But if you were to take a look at this phone book, this one's pretty good size. It's for our county, or the county we used to live in. The front is full of information about calling your local government, maps for the ferries. It's got the tide tables. So this, in the old days, was how you found out whether the tide on Puget Sound, when it was going to be high tide to arrange your fishing. But the front had all sorts of useful information. How to call 911, how to get locator services before you dig. And then, of course, you had the yellow pages. The yellow pages were, in fact, yellow, in case you've never seen one of these. And business advertising was done in here. Your common business got one line. That was standard. Had the name of the business, phone number, address. Yeah. Some of them had to go on 2 lines because the business name was long. Some don't even have the address. They might have a P.O. box or no contact information at all. But if you think about it, it's kind of like listing on eBay. Concepts have moved forward. So if you get your standard 1 or 2 lines with the address and the phone number, the name of the business, or you pay extra and you get a bigger advertisement. Now that could be money well spent, because in that bigger advertisement, just like promoted listings or paying eBay to put squares and highlights around your listings so they stand out from someone else's listing, because that's what it's all about, getting your items the attention. And in this pay-to-play environment, you often have to pay extra to get more attention. Now, if that translates into more sales and more profit for you at the end of the year, it can be a good thing. But it can be also money badly spent. Now, there are a couple other sections in this phone book. If you go all the way to the front, there are white business pages. Very generic, right? The next section, those are your residential. That's people's house phone numbers, and you could look them up, and this is where I looked to see if I was there. Back in the day, this was a useful resource. Now, most of this has moved online. Where I grew up in Michigan, my local village phone book was about this big. And I think it actually covered both towns, either side of the bay. Many of the merchants would get together, and they would get their advertisements on the outside of a vinyl wrap. And then along with your phone book, they'd hand out these vinyl wraps in their businesses. And it was a protective cover. It made your phone book last much longer. And their business would be front and center, because that's what advertising's all about, getting it front and center. This week I've been thinking about change. Yesterday we toured around the old county and took a look at some buildings. I've been cleaning out my office, which is where I found the yellow pages. Change. It really has changed. Adam and Eve didn't know what was coming. I'm Brian. I'm at the lake. Go out and advertise something. This is from the fires in our area. It's the front page of this paper I was looking at. Wildfires. Look at the haze. I can smell the smoke. I'll have to go online and get an update and see just how close they've gotten to us and how large the fires are. It's that time of year again.